Early voting, whether in person or via mail-in ballot, is happening across the country in 48 states. And so far, more than 30 million people have cast their vote, including former First Lady Michelle Obama, who posted a picture holding her mail-in ballot today. Early turnout in the battleground states of Georgia, North Carolina, Wisconsin, and Michigan is so high, it has broken records. So with polling basically frozen, can these early vote numbers tell us anything about where this race might be headed? Well, joining me now are two people who might be able to answer that question. Dan Pfeiffer, former senior advisor to President Obama, co-host of Pod Save America and author of the Message Box newsletter, a very productive man indeed. And Simon Rosenberg, political strategist and author of the Hopium Chronicles on Substack. It's great to have you guys here to disabuse me of notions that may not be accurate. But Dan, let me start with you first. And I would love both of you guys to weigh in on this. The early voting numbers in Nevada, in Arizona, in Georgia, Republicans are outpacing, or Republican registrants are outpacing Democratic registrants in the early vote. In North Carolina, it's effectively a tie. Now, Dan, I am told by some analysts that these are voters who are maybe going to vote anyway, so it doesn't necessarily predict anything on Election Day. But do you read anything into Republican motivation other than Trump's taboo against early voting has seemingly evaporated?
Yeah, I would not read too much into these. People have gotten a lot of elections wrong trying to read, particularly to read into the early vote very early in the process. What we are seeing is that Republicans are now voting early. From talking to folks in the campaign, what they're telling me is these are primarily people who are going to vote on Election Day anyway. So what we're not yet seeing is some evidence that a bunch of low propensity, less likely Republican voters are turning out as part of the early vote. It's just how people vote is changing in this country, which is why turnout is so high. And I think the Democrats are doing well. We have to learn more about the makeup of these voters over time. But don't read too much into it. Don't celebrate. Don't panic. It's a kind of a black box for most people.
A black box, Simon, is not a great place. I don't know. I don't like. Who wants to be in a black box? I will say, at the risk of being overly calm, no one's ever accused me of doing that. The idea that we hear that Republican registrations are higher, that they're going up, and Democratic ones are going down in certain battleground states like Pennsylvania. We're seeing the early vote is tilting more towards Republicans in certain battleground states, though not all. I'm assuming, given the fact that you're the author of the Hopium Chronicles, Simon, that you too are not reading too much into this.
Well, I think to go back to what you said at the beginning, I mean, the polling has been very steady and consistent now for 6 weeks since the debate happened. I mean, we had confirmation this week in the national polling that in the non-red wave polls, as I call it, the non-Republican polls, the independent polls, they've stayed very steady. Kamala Harris has a modest lead nationally and is in better shape in the battlegrounds. And what we all believed was going to happen now in this close, in these final few weeks, was that our ground advantage, the fact that we're putting more ads up in the air, the fact that the spectacle that they're creating every day, which you guys just talked about, is far more appealing and interesting and compelling than what the other team is doing, that we expected that we would be moving the election towards us, that we would take a close election and go out and win it. And I think in the last few days, as Dan pointed out, we're getting deeper into the early vote. So we're starting to understand a little bit more about the patterns. And Democrats have been improving in all 7 battleground states now for 3 days in a row, where things are getting better, marginally better, which is what we would expect given our advantages that I just discussed, the field advantages, the better media, right? Frankly, a far better and more appealing candidate as well, as Trump is ending in a messy way and not in a powerful way. So I'm very encouraged, actually, what I'm seeing in the battleground states over the last few days, because it's exactly what would happen if we're going to win, which is that things are going to get marginally better a little bit every day. And we go into Election Day with more momentum and more capacity, because the early vote is also a test of not just intensity, but also of organization. And Dan wrote about in his Substack that Jen O'Malley Dillon, who's running this campaign, is a field genius. And you're starting to see the impact, I think, of our stronger campaign on the ground, moving the vote towards us in the last few days in particular.
I think it bears mentioning that part of the, I'm not ever going to call it bedwetting, because I think that the stakes are way too high for anybody to be accused of wetting their bed if they're worried about this election. But some of the concern, if not the outright fear right now, is based on an influx of Republican, decidedly, explicitly Republican polls that have basically flooded the zone and maybe kind of on the margins nudging up the national polling or the polling averages. Now, I've stopped looking at polls because they seem to basically be frozen and 0.2, 0.3, negative 0.2, negative 0.3. What difference does that make, except for the narrative, Dan? And you've talked about, both of you guys have talked about this in the press and on your Substack, Dan, about what it does in terms of establishing a predicate for Trump supporters to say, our guy's about to run away with this, and anything less than a victory is a stolen election. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, look, I don't worry too much about what the media narrative does for the voters we need to turn out. They're not, as Joyanne Reed pointed out before he came on, they're not consuming all this information. They're going to make their decisions on which candidate they like better, which candidate is going to do more for their lives. But the fundamental danger of all of these Republican polls that are flooding the zone that Simon has written about so often is that they created an impression among the Republican base that Trump was going to win. It was an easy win. And if anything other than that happens, then there must have been some sort of malfeasance. This is exactly what happened in 2020. And it becomes the thing that Trump is going to wave around on election night when the race is called for Kamala Harris to say that it was stolen and then begin the process of the big lie 2.0, the insurrection 2.0. So it's important that we push back on that, and try to win this by as much as we possibly can to make that as hard a case as possible.
When we talk about lies and disinformation, I do want to bring everybody's attention to some breaking news from the Wall Street Journal. They are reporting that Trump's surrogate, the guy literally running Trump's ground operation, his grassroots outreach, his door knocking, Elon Musk, has had secret conversations with Vladimir Putin, numerous ones since 2022, the end, I believe, of 2022. Simon, President Obama spent a lot of time talking about the danger that Trump poses in a second term. Kamala Harris talked about it as well tonight. We now have John Kelly out there, his former chief of staff, his defense secretaries saying he would be a fascist in a second term. We now have reporting that the guy that is one of his close advisors, in many ways funding a lot of the Trump campaign, is in touch with America's greatest geopolitical adversary. Do you have a reaction to that? And do you have any sense of whether that's going to move anyone?
Well, I want to say one thing about what Dan said is that, remember, they wouldn't be dropping more than 80 polls, 31 different organizations, if they thought they were winning the election, right? This is really important to understand, that they're trying to shape the media narrative because it isn't actually going in the direction that they want. And so they've had to invest in all of this. And that's just, so it's a sign of weakness and not strength on their part. On this, look, I think that the role of Elon, there was a graphic that was put out after the convention where they had the Republican, it was on the GOP Twitter feed. It was Musk, Robert Kennedy, Tulsi Gabbard, J.D. Vance, and Donald Trump. The five people probably most closely aligned with the Russia wing of the Republican Party, all in one Star Wars bar, graphic that they used all the time. It is amazing how many of the people that they are pushing forward have such direct ties to Russia, and that we know that Elon does because Elon is without doubt the most important pro-Russian propagandist in American politics today. We also know that he does more business with communist China than virtually any other businessman. Very few people in the business world or Americans spend as much time with foreign hostile governments as Elon Musk does. This has always been a huge problem. And, it's actually really important, I think, that this comes out, because the idea that Elon has been pumping out this unbelievably rancid pro-Russian propaganda for the last 6 months, 9 months, 12 months without any kind of penalty for him is been not okay. I mean, the influence that the Republican Party, the way that the Russians have penetrated the Republican Party is a major issue, and I'm glad it's coming out right before the election.
Well, we're going to have more on that as we get more details. Dan Pfeiffer, Simon Rosenberg, thank you guys so much for helping me navigate this uncertain time. I appreciate your patience and wisdom.
Thank you so much, Alex.
Coming up, Tucker Carlson says Donald Trump is the